السلام كيف حالك يا شيخ؟ تجلس معنا؟ تجلس معنا ولا روح؟ بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا. اللهم زدنا علما إنك أنت عليم حكيم. اللهم اجعل هذه المحاضرة حجة لنا لا حجة علينا يا رب العالمين. أما بعد. This is our second class in fasting or pre-Ramadan class. Last week we spoke about Shama'il al-Muhammadiyya lil-Imam al-Tirmidhi rahimahullah ta'ala, and we spoke about, and we mentioned some ahadith from Shaykh Abdul-Razak al-Badr mentioned or his explanation of them. Today inshallah we're going to start Umdah Al-Ahkaam. Umdah Al-Ahkaam, Kitab al-Siyam, or the book of fasting, and Umdah Al-Ahkaam. Before we get started, the first thing is, what is a Siyam? What does that mean, to fast? Now this should be reviewed because y'all were going to the other class on Abu Sajid, so we should know what is fasting, what does it mean? And the reason we did it this way, he and I, when we decided to do Ramadan classes, one of us will start first, and then the next one will kind of come from behind and pick up the missing pieces, the fill in the gaps, all right? So inshallah ta'ala, we're going to fill in the gaps inshallah with hadith during this particular session. Before we get started, the first question is, what is a siyam? What is fasting?
To
refrain from something. Wait. What's fasting?
To refrain from food, drink, and most worldly things, sex, smoking, anything that doesn't have to do with like focusing on your Lord.
Anything that doesn't have to do with focusing on your Lord. Okay. Before we answer that question, quick fast. Has anyone ever heard the book Umdah Al-Ahkaam? Huh? You ever heard this book before? Anyone?
Before now? Or
Before now.
Before you mentioned it?
Yeah. Like, yeah? Okay. Like, Umdah Al-Ahkaam. Umdah Al-Ahkaam is a book of hadith. It's a book of hadith that are agreed upon by Imam al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim. The book was written, or compiled, if you will, by author. His name was Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi rahimahullah ta'ala. Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi rahimahullah ta'ala. He wrote this book, and in this book he compiled, where he combined between ahadith that you find in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. And the ahadith in this book, as many students of knowledge actually memorize Umdat Al-Ahkaam. And in this book of hadith, you find in it about 407 or so ahadith. You find many students of knowledge memorize Umdah Al-Ahkaam. In any event, this book was put together as Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi. He said, I'm going to read what he said. He says, فَإِنَّ بَعْضَ إِخْوَانِي سَأْلَنِي اخْتِصَارِ جُمْلَةً مِنْ أَحَادِيثِ الْأَحْكَامِ. He said that some of my brothers, they came to me and they asked me to summarize some hadith that deal with legislative rulings in a religion. All right, so we have some books of hadith. They're written, obviously all of them are the statements of the Prophet ﷺ. So what we find is that some scholars of Al-Islam, they compiled or combined certain ahadith and put them together in certain chapters or certain places. So we find that some scholars, like Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi, he put together different ahadith that deal with rulings in the religion, that deal with rulings. We have ahadith that may not necessarily deal with rulings. We have ahadith that may deal with something called fada'il al-a'mal, like virtuous actions. We have that gives us akhbar, information, right? But rulings have to do with halal and haram, sunnah, bid'ah, right? So in this particular book of ahadith that was compiled, the scholar or the author, he compiled them because he wanted to give the reader or the student the ability to understand different ahadith that deal with rulings in the religion. There's another book that's a little more extensive than Umdah Al-Ahkaam. It's called Bulugh al-Maram. Same concept. However, the ahadith in that book is a lot more than what we find in Umdah Al-Ahkaam. In fact, we have a statement from some of the scholars of the past. They say, "Man hafidha al-bulugh wa zad yahkum bayn al-ibad." Man hafidha al-bulugh wa zad yahkum bayn al-ibad. This is a statement that some of the scholars mention. It says, whoever memorizes Bulugh al-Maram and Zad al-Mustaqni', the other book that we're covering, hakama bayn al-ibad, then they reach the point where they can give legislative rulings between the slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's how powerful those two books are. That's how powerful those two books are. At any event, Umdah Al-Ahkaam is a step below Bulugh al-Maram. It's a good book in that we find ahadith that are found in Bukhari and Muslim. So at any event, he said that some of my brothers, they came to me and they wanted me to compile a book of ahadith that will help them with rulings in the religion. But they wanted ahadith that were agreed upon by Imam Muslim and Imam al-Bukhari. Imam Muslim and Imam al-Bukhari. In Islam, Muslims understand that the most authentic books of ahadith are Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. And so because of that, he wanted to make it easy on the learner, if you will, to look through Bukhari and Muslim to find out about rulings in the religion. Like, is that clear? Like, so now when we talk about as-siyam, what does the word as-siyam mean? What does that mean again? Fasting. So when we say fasting in a religion, what do we understand by fasting? Huh?
Did you abstain from food and drink from sunrise to sunset?
Abstain from food and drink. Right. What else?
Sex. Loud
Right.
talking.
Right. Talking?
Cursing. Loud talking.
Loud talking.
Cursing.
Right.
Smoking.
So we have, as we mentioned before, when it comes to understanding rulings, we have something called a linguistic meaning and we have a legislative meaning. The linguistic meaning for as-siyam or som is al-imsak. Imsak means to refrain, to hold back from, to not do something, right? And this is due to the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala we find in the Quran, where Allah says, فَقُولِي إِنِّي نَذَرْتُ لِلرَّحْمَنِ صَوْمًا. He said that I gave a pledge to Allah that I'm not going to speak. So here in the Quran, we find that the word Sawm in Surah Al-Maryam, verse number 26, is also used to what? To refrain from speech. It's also used to refrain from speech. However, a legislative meaning the Sharia meaning of the word Sawm or fasting, I want you guys to pay attention to this definition. The scholars of Al-Islam, they put definitions together, and we said this before, they put definitions together and they say that they are jami'un, mani'un. Jami'un, it means that it's all inclusive. Mani'un, it means that it is exclusive at the same time. Inclusive and exclusive. Inclusive in that whatever the meaning of that word is, we find it in the definition. Exclusive, meaning that you won't find the other meaning, you won't find other words in the definition that shouldn't belong here. So listen to how descriptive the definition of the word is. It says, وَشَرْعًا إِمْسَاكٌ عَنْ أَشْيَاءٍ, the hold back from things. Imsak means to hold back from or to refrain from certain things. مَخْصُوصَةٍ, specific things. فِي زَمَنٍ, in a particular time period. مَخْصُوصٍ, in a particular or specific time. To stay away from specific things during a specific time. Min shakhsin maqsusin, from a specific person. Biniyatin maqsusa, with a specific intention. Does that make sense? It doesn't. So essentially, when we look at this definition, we find that a person that is refraining from specific things. Those specific things are things that we're going to later talk about, right? During a specific time period. What time? Ramadan, right? A particular month out of the year. Min shakhsin maqsusin, from who? Anybody or specific people?
Muslim.
Okay, what else? Muslim. Who else? What type of Muslim?
Practicing.
Any Muslim, right? But what if what about children? Are they included in this? They haven't reached the age of puberty? What about women when they're in their menses? Are they included in that? Right. So it says for a person, a specific person, during a specific time, with a specific niyyah. Why is that important? Why is the intention important?
Because you can't do it without intention.
You can't do what without the intention? What can't you do without the intention? You can't fast without the intention. Right. So then, we're going to start this hadith with the first hadith in the chapter of Siyam. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا تقدموا رمضان بصوم يوم ولا يومين إلا رجلا كان يصوم صوما فليصمه. So the way we're going to do this is, I'm going to translate the hadith. After I translate the hadith, I want you all to tell me what are some benefits you can pull from the hadith, and then we'll compare that to what some of the scholars of Islam pull from the hadith. Cool? So the first thing is, you got it. So this hadith was reported by Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu, where he said that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, لا تقدموا رمضان بصوم. Do not precede the month of Ramadan with fasting. 1 day before, ولا يومين, or 2 days before. Except for a man, كان يصوم صوما فليصومه. Except for a man who usually fasts during that time, then it is for him to continue his fasting. First of all, does the hadith make sense first? Good. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, do not precede the month of Ramadan 1 or 2 days fasting. Meaning, if it was known that Ramadan is tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, do not fast today and tomorrow going into Ramadan. Right? And they said, except for a man who usually fasts during that time, then it's for him to fast. What are some benefits that we can pull from this hadith? Crickets.
No, you saying benefits like.
Listen, when we studied this, when we studied this with some of the scholars, right? They'll read the hadith and they'll say, okay, you give us benefit from the hadith. You got to say something. Give us some benefit from this hadith. What can you extract from this hadith?
That
And mind you, this is majala ta'neem. We're all learning here, so it's not like you make a mistake, it's okay.
so
La ba'as, inshallah. Tayyib.
what happens is you don't want to fast the 2 days before or the day before because you wasn't doing it consistently before that, before the month of Ramadan.
Tayyib. So can we say this? So when we look at this hadith, this is how we got to look at it. When the Prophet ﷺ said, La taqaddamu, do not proceed fasting 1 or 2 days before Ramadan, except for a person who usually fasts. In that case, then fast. So then, right off that hadith, right now, the question I ask for you is, what's the ruling on that? Is it halal, haram, sunnah, bid'ah? What is it?
I say that it's haram
For you to fast. For you to fast
before
the day before Ramadan.
day before Ramadan.
Or 1 or 2 days before Ramadan. Huh?
If you wasn't previously doing it.
Right, so what's the ruling on that? Is it halal or haram?
I say it's haram.
You say it's haram.
Yeah, if you
Tayyib, mumtaz. And this is based on what?
based on the hadith.
Based on the hadith. Tayyib. Tayyib. Alright. What about you? What do you think?
You said it was from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
What's from the Prophet?
The narration.
Yeah, it's hadith. Alright, so before we listen, so before we get in, let's come with some rules first. Alright? So here's the rules. Anytime we find in a hadith or ayah, anytime we find a command that comes from Allah or His Messenger, anytime we find a command that comes from Allah or His Messenger, the origin is that command is obligatory to follow. Well, then, and what I mean by obligatory, if you don't do it, it's haram. This is a general rule of thumb. Likewise, anytime we get a prohibition by way of the Quran or by way of the Sunnah, the origin is that prohibition means that something is impermissible. These are the rules. So based on the rules that we just mentioned, how do we understand this hadith? Now we're going to read the hadith again, and we're going to look at it, right? And we look at the hadith, we're going to try to apply those rules, and then give me what benefits you have, and then we'll tell you we'll mention what some of the scholars say about the hadith. Right? So the first hadith, it says, An-Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, La taqaddamu Ramadana bisawmin yawmin aw yawmain. Do not precede the month of Ramadan 1 or 2 days fasting. Meaning, do not fast 1 or 2 days before Ramadan, except for a man who usually fasts during that time. In this case, that he fasted. So, what benefit can we get from this hadith?
The importance of starting the fast of the month of Ramadan on time.
The importance of starting it on time. So how do you get that from the hadith?
Because if you're not supposed to fast before, you might confuse yourself.
Okay.
Unless you're already used to praying around that time, like you said.
Mash. Huh?
Well, you kind of answered the question.
Tayyib Shindik.
If I was a person who fasts every week, Mondays and Thursdays, and then Ramadan came in on a Friday, it's permissible for me to do that Thursday because that was something I did on a regular basis.
Excellent. You understand that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next
question. Good. That's a good point, mashallah. Tayyib. So we have lahu likarata taqaddam ma'an. So there are quite a few things that some of the scholars mention about proceeding to fast during those days, right? So one of them, it says, Ahaduha khawfa min an yuzadu for Ramadan. First of all, the ruling is that it's hated. It's not haram. The first thing we're going to talk about is that it is hated, it is not haram. Question. If you remember, what were the rules that we just mentioned? Do you remember? What were the rules?
If it's a command from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam,
Or
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
So if we got a command from Allah or the Prophet ﷺ, then the rule of thumb is what?
It's obligatory.
That is obligatory. Mumtaz. And if you got a prohibition from Allah and His Messenger, then the rule of thumb is what? That is what? Haram. Excellent. Question. Why do the scholars say that it's hated and not haram?
That's because you can do it, but it's hated, right?
But what makes it hated? When we just said that the rule is, if Allah commands us to do something, the origin is that it is wajib. If Allah prohibits us from doing something, that means that that thing is haram. Commands are usually wajib and prohibitions are usually haram for you to do it. Does that make sense?
No.
Or no? Right. Question now is, Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam gave us a prohibition. He said, La taqaddamu, do not precede Ramadan with 1 day of fasting and 2 days of fasting, except for a person who normally fasts during that time. Then in this case, he or she should fast. The question now is, I want you to understand the question. The question now is, why do the scholars say it's hated for a person to do that and that is not haram? What's the reason?
Even if they,
we just gave you the rule.
Even if they already been doing it, you saying?
Listen to the question. The rule has already been established. The rule is what? That if a person does it, that is not permissible to do. And the ruling is what? Any command from Allah and His Messenger, something is wajib. Any prohibition, that means it's haram. Why isn't it haram now for a person to fast 1 or 2 days before? Why is it just hated? Do you understand the question? Huh? Did I confuse you? Did I lose you?
What you call it? When you kind of when it's changed.
Listen again. Pay attention. This is from Usul al-Fiqh. It's very important to understand in some cases because it gives you the tools to kind of look at Islam and understand why certain things are the way that they are. If we find a prohibition, for example, Allah says do this, like La taqaddamu, the Prophet ﷺ said, do not precede Ramadan with 1 or 2 days of fasting. Let's just stop on that part of the hadith. So that means if you do precede Ramadan 1 or 2 days fasting, it's something you shouldn't do. What's the ruling on that? Based on the rules that I gave you, it would be considered haram, right? Because it was a prohibition. Sorry?
Right.
Are you with me? Right. Why do the scholars of the past not say that it's haram? They just say it's hated, but it's not haram. Why? Why do you think they would say that? Huh? What changes? So the question now is, what changes a ruling in Islam from being haram to being hated to being halal? How does it change when we have the rule in place? What causes the rule to change?
It's a particular term, if I'm not mistaken. I can't think of it.
But how do you change that? Say again? The exception. Okay.
Yeah.
The exception. Right. What else? What else besides the exception? So, for example, one of them is that we can look at the exception, right? Another one is that when the companions, and this is where it really changes. When we have a hadith like this, the practice of the companions will determine to us whether it is obligatory, hated, or so on and so forth. A Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam will say something, and then after that, we have to look at the qara'in. The qara'in are outside factors that would stipulate the meaning of the hadith, whether it's haram, whether it's hated, so on and so forth. So here, I want to read to you some of the reasons why the scholars of Islam say that it's hated, but it's not haram, but it's hated. So some of the reasons, as is mentioned here, ahaduha khawfa min yuzfad.
So when you read this, you want to, because I'm a little confused here.
If you're confused, let's stop right now. Clear up the
know,
confusion and go on.
Yeah, because I'm trying to figure out when you ask us, can you just explain that again?
Explain which part.
What?
Isn't there a particular term for when a ruling is altered or
Is there a
changed?
particular
And
term?
I guess the answer to the question.
No, what you're talking about, something being abrogated. No, this is not that
What I'm
chapter.
saying is, how did it change? I didn't understand it.
All right.
Change.
So let's say something. Remember when I said the rule is, this is the rule. The rule is, if Allah and His Messenger command us to do something, the origin is that it becomes wajib to do that thing.
They commanded us to do something.
Yeah, anything that Allah and His Messenger command us to do, the origin is that it's wajib, means you must do it. Meaning that if you don't do it, you are deserving of Allah's punishment.
Okay.
Understand what wajib means, okay? If Allah and His Messenger prohibit us from doing something, the origin is that that thing is haram. That means if we do that thing, we are deserving of Allah's punishment. So if we leave off something that is wajib, we are deserving of Allah's punishment. If we do something that is haram, we are what? Deserving of Allah's punishment. Is that clear so far?
Yes.
So, anytime we find that Allah and His Messenger command us to do something, the rule of thumb is what? Is that thing is what?
That thing is
Obligatory.
It's obligatory. It's obligatory. Anytime we find that Allah or His Messenger command us to do something, that thing becomes obligatory. Anytime we're prohibited or prevented from doing something, that thing is haram. This is the rule of thumb. Now, what causes that thing from being wajib or haram to change?
Like the sister said, they must have received a stipulation.
So what are the stipulations? The stipulations are usually the actions of the companions when it comes to implementing the hadith. Understand? For example, and this is part of belief of Ahlul Sunnah, is that you have to have good thoughts of the companions. Right? So if the Prophet ﷺ says something, and then we find, if he says don't do this, but we find the companions doing it, then that means that thing is hated, but it's not haram. Is that clear? If the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if he says don't do this, and we're going to find this in some ahadith later, the Prophet ﷺ told the companions don't do this, right? But then when we find companions doing exactly what the Prophet ﷺ said don't do, then that action wasn't haram, but it was hated. If we find that none of the companions did it, when the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said don't do it, and none of the companions did it, then the origin is still intact. That it is what? Haram. Is that clear? This is how you understand the text. This is why it's so important for Muslims. Whatever we do, we have to look at the companions. How did they understand the text? It's not for us to interpret on our own. When you look at a verse in the Quran or a sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, you start interpreting things on your own. This is when you fall into error. This is when you get certain groups that do all types of stuff because they have their own interpretations, right? So it was important for a Muslim to always take their interpretations from the companions and those that come after them. So then, can we go on? Why are you laughing, Sheikh? طيب أحدها خوف من أن يزاد في رمضان ما ليس منه. So one of the reasons why it's hated is that some of the scholars say that if you fast one day before Ramadan, they are afraid that you're adding a day to Ramadan that's not from Ramadan.
You know, I would want to say that.
You always want to say that?
No, seriously, I would really want to say because if you fast that 1 or 2 days before Ramadan, it's like you're adding to Ramadan, but I figured that being those Ramadan is a certain month.
Right.
It wouldn't, it wouldn't come together.
Right.
So I was,
if that's what you're going to say, that's good.
Yeah, I was skeptical about saying it. You know what I mean?
Another one they mentioned is al-faslu bayna siyam al-fard wal-nafl. Another reason why you shouldn't fast, because there needs to be a distinction between an obligatory fast versus a sunnah fast. Meaning, if I fasted one day before Ramadan, and then the next day is Ramadan, where's the break between the two? How do I know which one is sunnah, which one is wajib? This is an argument. These are some of the reasons why it is hated. الثالث, the third reason they mentioned, أنه لتقوي على صيام رمضان. You shouldn't fast 1 or 2 days before Ramadan so that you can have strength to fast during Ramadan. This is an argument. Meaning, why would you fast 1 or 2 days before Ramadan that way you can get your strength together and then start fasting with a clean slate, not like you were fasting a day or two before. This is what some of the arguments that some of the scholars make with regards to that. Imam Ibn Rajab, Al-Hafiz Ibn Rajab, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, Siyamu akhir al-Sha'ban lahu thalathata ahwal. So pay attention. If a person fasts 1 or 2 days before Ramadan, what month are they fasting? Huh? They're fasting in the month of Sha'ban. Sah? So, Al-Hafiz Ibn Rajab, rahimahullah, he mentions 3 conditions with regards to fasting during Sha'ban, or towards the end of the month of Sha'ban. And he says, أَحَدُهَا أَنْ يَصُومْ بِالنِّيَّةِ الرَّمَضَانِيَّةِ احْتِيَاطًا لِرَمَضَانِ. He says, if you are to fast during those last 2 days of Sha'ban, then fast with the niyyah, with the intention that potentially it could be Ramadan, because you don't know. You understand? This is why a person shouldn't fast. But if a person does fast, then this is what he's saying. And then he says, Thani, and yusam b'niyyat another. If a person is fasting because they are fasting with a purpose, with the niyyah or intentions of another. Does anyone know what another is? Yufuna bin another. You know what another is? Another is, like, say you take an oath. You say, oh Allah, if I get this new job, I'm going to fast 3 days in a row. This here is another, right? When you make this oath, you have to fulfill it. It becomes obligatory. So like say, for example, if a person made this oath and they wanted to fast, and they made the oath, but it falls on fasting 1 or 2 days before Ramadan, then they have to, right? Another situation would be if a person missed days of fasting on Ramadan the previous year, and they have 2 days left, and it's potentially 2 days before Ramadan, they have to fast those 2 days. Right. A third reason he mentioned, and yusam b'niyyat at-tatawwu' al-mutlaq, that if a person does fast, then they should fast with the intentions of it being a recommended fast, like a sunnah fast. If a person were to fast during that time, even though it is hated, something that is not recommended, Like, any other questions about that? Like, al-mu'tamid al-madhab. So, what is relied upon in the school of Imam Ahmed with regards to this? Adam al-karaha and taqaddum Ramadan bi-siyam thalatha ayyam fasa'idan. In the school of thought of Imam Ahmed, it is not hated for a person if they were to fast 3 days before Ramadan, not 1 or 2. If a person were to fast 1 or 2 days before Ramadan, then that is what? Hated. However, if a person fasts 3 days before Ramadan, then that is what? There's no problem. La ba's. It's not hated. طيب. وَكَذَا إِنْ وَافَقَ عَادَةً. And likewise, if this person normally fasts, let's say he fasts or she fasts on Mondays and Thursdays, and it just so happens to fall on one of those days, 1 or 2 days before Ramadan, in this case, la ba's. It's okay. It is not considered to be hated. But any questions about that hadith? Alright, the next hadith, there's a lot of conversation about it. Before we get started with the next hadith, does everyone know the difference between when a day starts in Islam? When does the day actually start? At night. Right? What month are we in? Does anyone know?
Sha'ban.
Huh?
Rajab.
We're in Rajab or Sha'ban?
We still in Rajab.
You sure? Yeah, Ikhwan. Shuf. Look and see. We're in Sha'ban? Or we in Ramadan? Are we in Ramadan yet? Alhamdulillah. Tayyib. So then, we're in Rajab. Tayyib. You sure?
27th of Rajab.
Ahsant. So pay attention. Do you know how the nights and days work in Islam? Does anyone know? When does the day start?
After Maghrib.
So the new night starts. So what comes first, the day and the night, or the night and the day?
The night.
Does anyone understand how that works?
I understand it, but I still want you to explain it.
All right, but before I explain, I just want to know what you understand first.
That the night the night begins after Maghrib.
So the night begins at Maghrib.
What a day.
The day. So right now, today was what, the 27th of?
Right. 28th.
The 28th? The 28th day. The day was the 28th of Rajab?
The 28th day.
All right, Mumtaz. As soon as Maghrib came in, it became what?
The 28th day.
La.
I'm sorry, we're now in the 28th of Rajab, meaning this night is starting.
No, I don't want to talk about the night yet. The day, like at 12 o'clock today, was what?
It was the 27th.
All right, so listen, pay attention. At 12 o'clock today, this afternoon, it was what? The 27th of Rajab. Well, is that clear? All right. As soon as Maghrib came in, what happened? We came into the 28th
Day.
night.
One night.
The 28th night of Rajab. Okay? After Fajr is going to be what? The 28th what? Day. And then when Maghrib comes, it's going to be what? The 29th night. And then after Fajr is going to be what? The what day? The 20, what?
29th.
The 29th day. All right? Now, at that night is when people go out and look, because in Islam, a month is how many days?
29 or 30.
29 or 30. In Islam, a month is either 29 or 30 days. All right? So on the 29th day, every month is always going to be at least 29 days in a month. How do we know when that month ends and a new month comes in? Because what are you looking for? Looking for a full moon?
Crescent.
Yeah, shit. What are we looking for? On the 29th day,
Is it like a quarter moon? Crescent?
listen. On the night of the 29th, meaning the 29th night, and then we come up towards the 29th day. At Maghrib, we're going to go out and look for the crescent moon. A little slither. If we see it, that represents what? The new moon. That means it will be the first of Sha'ban. Now let's say we go out and look and we don't see it. Then what?
It's the 30th night.
Then it's the 30th night of Rajab until the 30th day, and then we know that Sha'ban will be the day after that. Is that clear? You sure that's clear? Okay, so now we're going to read this hadith. طيب. عن عبد الله بن عمر رضي الله تعالى عنهما قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول إذا رأيتموه فصوموا وإذا رأيتموه فأفطروا فإن غم عليكم فاقدروا له. This hadith is reported by Imam al-Bukhari. You can find this hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari. It was on Abdullah ibn Umar. Abdullah ibn Umar, he's the son of who? Umar ibn Khattab, radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, both of them. May Allah be pleased with both of them. He said, I heard, sami'tu. Now one thing we have to know is that Ibn Umar, he was from the companions that if the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, if he stood in a certain place, he would want to go run and stand in that place that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam stood. This shows his attentiveness to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam and how he moved. He wanted to be just like him and move like him. So he says, Qala sami'tu. He said, I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam say, إِذَا رَأَيْتَمُوهُ فَصُومُوا. If you see it, then fast, and if you see it, then break your fast. فَإِنْ غُمَّ عَلَيْكُمْ. And if it becomes cloudy, فَقْدُرُوا لَهُ. Then, we're going to talk about that later, then take proper consideration. We're going to translate فَقْدُرُوا لَهُ, means to take proper consideration. We're going to talk about that in a minute. In this hadith, when the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, if you see the what? What are they talking about? If you see it, then fast, and if you see it, then break your fast. If you see the moon. What moon? What moon are they talking about? The new moon? Or the new moon? Can you see the new moon? The crescent. I don't think we can see the new moon. Can you? I don't think we're supposed to. The crescent. Like, فَإِنْ غُمَّ عَلَيْكُمْ. If it becomes cloudy, فَقْدُرُوا لَهُ. Some scholars say this, take into consideration, means to start the next day fasting as if it's Ramadan. And some of them say, the next day You don't fast until you see it, so you basically wake up breaking your fast until that time comes. So right now we're talking about the 29th day of Sha'ban. The 29th day of Sha'ban. What people will do is they will go out when Sha'ban, the 29th of Sha'ban, once Maghrib comes in, people are going to go out and look. This is what this hadith is referring to. This hadith is referring to those who go out and look for the crescent moon during the night, meaning going into the 30th night of Sha'ban, meaning the 29th. They will go out as soon as that night, the 30th night, if you will, they're going to go out and look. If they see the crescent moon, then that will be that night. Instead of it being the 30th night of Sha'ban, it will be the first night of Ramadan. That means people will be praying in the masajid, tarawih. They will be praying in the masajid, tarawih, on that night. Is that clear? Any questions? No.
Don't we wait to like hear from Saudi if they sighted the new moon?
Don't we wait until we hear from Saudi to see if they sight the moon?
Look at ourselves and say, oh, it's Ramadan.
Tayyib. So, with regards to moon sightings, did y'all talk about this already? Yes. Shway, a little? Right. With regards to moon sightings, I actually did a talk on this about a couple years ago, on moon sightings. But a quick rehash, when it comes to moon sightings, right? Nabi alayhi salam, everyone uses this hadith. إِذَا رَأَيْتَمُوهُ فَصُومُوا وَإِذَا رَأَيْتَمُوهُ فَأَفْطِرُوا. If you see it, then you fast. And if you see it, then you break your fast. With regards to local sightings versus international sightings, the companions, radiallahu ta'ala anhum, they differed on that issue. In fact, many scholars even hold that the local sighting of a particular place is better than an international sighting, if you will. As we find in narrations, and we'll talk about this as we get to it in more detail, some of the Sahaba, they actually traveled to a place during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and they found that they weren't fasting yet because they didn't see the moon. Or they started fasting early, and when they came back, they found that the other people weren't fasting because they didn't see the moon in their location. Many of the scholars of Al-Islam, they use this narration to show that it is preferable for people to go with their local sightings, intending. So what's preferable is that people go with their local sightings based on the hadith, Sumu idha ra'aytumuhu fa'aftiru idha ra'aytumuhu. Fast when you see it and break your fast when you see it. Some of them understand this hadith to mean that if all the Muslims around the world see it, then you fast with them. Some of the scholars say, la, if the people in your locale see the moon, then you fast with them. Now, where's the issue? The issue lies when it comes with the sun or the moon, right? The sun rises in different locations, right or wrong. Right. So in our time zone where we live, there's going to be one particular way the sun will rise. In the Midwest, it's going to be a different way. In California, it's going to be a different way. In Saudi Arabia, it's going to be a different way. In the UK, it's going to be a different way. There are going to be different ways in which the sun rises and sets, right? Everything's going to be different. So when we say local sightings, what's understood by local sighting? Does anyone know?
Meaning?
Local sighting means your locale, where you live. Where you live. Now the issue is, let's assume that we have people that you trust that are competent and know exactly what they're looking for, where to look for it at. Then many scholars will say that this would be better to follow that local sighting. Well, the problem is that here in Philadelphia, if you say you're going to go with a local sighting would mean people in the Philadelphia area are actually looking for the moon. It doesn't mean that people in the Philadelphia area are waiting for people in Texas or waiting for people in California because they're after you. They're not going to see the moon before you. Do you understand? Well, now, because of that, many Muslims here may not necessarily trust the local sighting. So they may go with the international sighting. And it's not a problem. It's not an issue. It's not an issue because you don't find a Sahaba making it an issue when they differed in that same exact situation. And the problem with that is, how do we make something an issue that the Sahaba didn't make an issue? Well, there. And we're going to find out more as we go along with these different ahadith about some of the things that the Sahaba differed on that they didn't make an issue, but if they were to happen in our communities, قَامَ الدُّنْيَا وَمَا فِيهَا. قَامَ الدُّنْيَا وَمَا فِيهَا. Meaning, people be, going crazy about it. طيب? So, when it comes to this hadith, فَقْدِرُوا لَهُ. And inshallah, we're going to talk about that in more detail, or maybe Saeed is going to address that if y'all didn't cover this part yet. And Al-Thamaraat. And some of them call this the day of shak, the day of doubt. Does that make sense? Right. So as we have this narration here, Paul and Nafir. Has anyone ever heard of Nafir? Nafir was a servant of Ibn Umar. He was a servant of Ibn Umar. His name was Nafir. Anytime we have a narration on Nafir, on Ibn Umar, it's one of the strongest narrations. One of the strongest narrations. This is a side note. In any event, قال النافع كان عبد الله بن عمر رضي الله تعالى عنهما إذا مضى من شعبان 29 يبعث من ينظر. Alright, so as we read this here, we're going to find, and I'm sure you're going to find in other ahadith and other brothers you may listen to talk about this, some of the other masajid, they're probably teaching maybe the same book or a different book with regards to fasting. You'll find many of the modern day scholars, they say that, you don't do what Ibn Umar did. You will find that. But then you also find many of the earlier scholars saying, you actually do what Ibn Umar did. And so we're going to mention this now. عن عبد الله بن عمر رضي الله تعالى عنهما إذا مضى من شعبان 29 يبعث من ينظر. Ibn Umar رضي الله تعالى عنه, if it passes 29 days of Sha'ban, then he will look for someone to look for the moon. He will look for someone to look for the moon. فَإِنْ رَأَى فَذَاكِ. If they see the moon, then we're fasting. وَإِنْ لَمْ يَرَى لَمْ يَحِلْ دُونَ مَنْظُرِهِ سَحَابٌ وَلَا قَطْرٌ أَصْبَحَ مُفْطِرٌ. And they said, if they go out there and they look and they don't see the crescent moon, and it also is not cloudy, and there's not like mist in the sky, then they will wake up the next day muftiran. Muftiran means that they what? That they are what? They're not fasting. So pay attention. I want us to have some tasawwur. I want us to look at, understand what's going on here. On the 29th day of Sha'ban, Ibn Umar is looking for someone. Hey, Fulan, I want you to go look and see if we see the crescent moon, so we know what we're doing tomorrow, or that night. Meaning, is Ramadan starting that night, or do we got another day before Ramadan comes in? So Ibn Umar, he sent someone to look. When a person came back, if they saw the crescent moon, that means Ramadan started that night. The first night of Ramadan would have been that night. If that person came back and they didn't see the crescent moon, they also didn't see any clouds or any mist in the sky. They didn't see any cloud, no mist in the sky. Then they will wake up the next day. That will be the 30th day of Sha'ban. The next day will be the 30th day of Sha'ban. Meaning, at that point in Ramadan, at that point right there will be considered the 30th night of Sha'ban going to the 30th morning, the next day. Is that clear? Right. And then it says, وَإِنْ حَالَ دُونَ مَنْظَرِهِ سَحَابٌ. However, if that person goes out and look and they find that it's cloudy, if they go out and look and find that it's cloudy, أَوْ قَطْرٌ, or it's mist in the sky, أَصْبَحَ صَائِمًا, then they will wake up fasting. Then they will wake up meaning that night then will be the first of Ramadan. That night will equal the first of Ramadan. طيب. وَكَذَا كَانَ عُمَرُ ibn Khattab. Umar ibn Khattab used to do the same thing that his son did. رضي الله تعالى عنهما يصوم إذا كان السماء في تلك الليلة متغيمة وَلَيْسَ هَذَا بِالتَّقْدِيرِ وَلَكِنَّهُ لِلتَّحَرِّي. And Ibn Umar, the son of Umar ibn al-Khattab, used to do it, as well as Umar ibn al-Khattab used to do it. We find that a lot of the scholars of the past held this position. وَقَرَّوَ الرَّبِيعِ عَنِ الشَّافِعِي. And we have a narration of Ali ibn Abi Talib. He said, أَنَّ عَلِيَّ ibn Abi Talib رضي الله تعالى عنه قال لأن أصوم يوما من شعبان أحب إلي من أن أفطر يوما من رمضان. So Ali ibn Abi Talib, he said, because we don't know for sure if that's Ramadan or not. Sah? Why do we not know for sure?
Because it was cloudy.
Because it was cloudy. It could have been or it could not have been. We don't know. So Ali ibn Abi Talib, he said, La asuma yawmin min Sha'ban. He said, it is more beloved for me to fast one day in Sha'ban than it is for me to break my fast and eat one day in Ramadan. Does that make sense?
Basically, I'd rather be early than late.
Exactly. He's saying I would rather fast a day in Sha'ban than to break my fast in a day of Ramadan if it's cloudy outside. طيب. وروى إمام أحمد بسنده أن أبا هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه قال لأن أتعجل في صوم رمضان بيوم أحب إلي من أن أتأخر لأني إذا تعجلت لم يفوتني وإذا تأخرت فاتني. So we also have a statement from Abu Hurairah. He said, for me to speed up by fasting one extra day of Ramadan because of the cloud is better for me than for me to delay a day of Ramadan if it was actually Ramadan. He said, because he says, if I was quick, then I didn't lose a day in Ramadan. But if I delayed it and waited, then I could have missed a day of Ramadan. And this is how the Salaf, they were very keen on, first of all, they would make dua 6 months after Ramadan that Allah accepted their Ramadan. And then for the next 6 months that Allah allows them to see Ramadan. So when Ramadan came, they didn't play around. They were very serious about ensuring that they made their fast during that time. Right. Any questions about that? Any questions about that? I don't want to get into too much detail. Right. I'm going to bring a statement. We're going to end this lecture tonight with a statement of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala. Shaykh, you look tired, mashallah. Like, Shaykh al-Islam, he says, وعن إمام أحمد لا يجب الصوم بل يجوز في حالتين. It's not wajib to fast during that time, but it's, to some of them, considered to be recommended. And then he says, وَاخْتَارَهُ شَيْخُ الْإِسْلَامِ ibn Taymiyyah. And this is a position of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah. He says, لأن الصحابة رضوان الله عليهم كان يصبح منهم صائم ومفطر. So pay attention to this. Imagine if this were to happen in our community. The Sahaba, some of them will wake up fasting, and some of them will wake up not fasting because it's cloudy outside. Pay attention. This is the kalam of Shaykh al-Islam. It's not my speech. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, he said that some of the Sahaba, they will wake up, وَمِنْهُمْ صَائِمٌ وَمُفْتِرٌ. That we will find some of the Sahaba, they will be fasting because of the cloud, and some of the Sahaba, they would not be fasting. Now imagine if something like that happened in our community today. What type of problems? Oh, his brothers, they're following desires, right? So what does Shaykh al-Islam say? He says, فَلَا صَائِمٌ يُعِيبُ عَلَى مُفْتِرِ وَلَا مُفْتِرُ يُعِيبُ عَلَى صَائِمِ. You can find this in Majmu' Fatawa of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, the 25th volume, page 124, depending on whatever print you have. He says, you do not find the one that's fasting looking down on the one that didn't fast, and you don't find the one that didn't fast looking down on the one that fasted. Allahu Akbar. This is the way of the Salaf. This is what the scholars of the past were really upon. Yet we find people, if you don't listen to the person I listen to, you cast away from Islam almost. Huh? This is the way the scholars of the past were upon. This was their way. Matter of fact, this was the way of the Sahaba. Shaykh al-Islam said that, just understand, let's have proper tasawwur. Let's understand what took place. What took place was, some of them looked to see the crescent moon. We have ahadith. Some of the scholars say this hadith here, it means that you should fast. You should wait until the 30 days and not fast on that 30th day if it's cloudy. Some say not. There's a difference of opinion. So what we find is some of the Sahaba, they woke up fasting on that day when it was cloudy. And some of the Sahaba, they did not. So imagine you and I in the same masjid right now. Right now, you and I, right here. You and I, right? I'm telling you, Aki, it's cloudy, we're going to follow this narration. We're fasting tomorrow. You're like, no, I'm not really feeling that. I'm going to go with the other one. Do you think that can exist in this city right now, in the same place? In this city, can that exist? No. Why not? Jahl. It's ignorance, that's why. The reason why that can't exist is because we collectively don't have the knowledge that we need. Salah. If I told you it was cloudy out, or better yet, I'm following a local sighting. This is more relevant. I'm following a local sighting here. You're following the sighting in Saudi Arabia. If you don't follow the sighting in Saudi Arabia, if you don't follow here, this is the argument. The argument is you're trying to be an Arab. This is the argument. And if you follow the international sighting and you want to look down on the one that followed the local sighting, y'all ignorant anyway. You don't know what you're doing. Right? It's not that, okay, you know what, I'm more comfortable following this way, you're more comfortable doing that way. It's room there. Huh? Now, fuck that.
That happens every year, though. Different communities start on this day, another community start on that day.
But it's okay.
Eat on this day.
But it's okay. Lebets. It's okay. It's not haram. If they want to follow local sighting, let them follow local sighting. You want to follow international sighting, follow them. These are not issues that are causes the different. And if they are, find me from the scholars of the past, from the Sahaba, that they differed on those issues. And then the whole conversation would change. Huh? So what I'm saying, Ikhwan, is that the more we educate ourselves with real knowledge, Quran, Sunnah, what's really in the Quran and Sunnah, what the Sahaba really did, what the scholars of the past really said, then it will make our lives a lot easier. Huh? It will make our lives a lot easier, and Islam is not difficult for any of us. Now,
so what method do we actually follow in the Salafi community?
What method do you follow in the what?
In this community.
This community here?
Salafi community. Yeah, I wait for one of my sheikhs. They call me, say Ramadan started. I'm good with it. I know they know. But
you need to know what you're looking
that's
for.
That's what I'm saying. You have to. That'll be something you have.
You need to know what you're looking for.
Right.
Like I said,
some people just be looking at it.
Yeah, but like I said, if I trust a person that knows what they're looking for, perhaps we can go with the local sighting. Maybe. It's not that big of a deal though. That's my point. It's not something I'm gonna say, well, brother, if you don't do it, you're not following the Sunnah. Huh? And that's a problem. It's a problem. Does that make sense? So, we don't have groupthink here. We don't practice groupthink. Alhamdulillah, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us brains, we use them. Alright? We use the brain. So if it makes sense and if it's conducive for the people in the community, then we'll do local. Or like I said, for us, we're more comfortable with the international sighting only because this is what we've been around for the past 10, 15 years, living overseas and dealing with that. However, coming back to the States, it's not something hard. I can't say, we don't see it to be permissible to follow local sightings. Perhaps if it's, the people, I need to feel comfortable with the people that are looking. They say, do you know what you're looking for? Huh? You can't tell me you're doing a local sighting and you're waiting on California. You can't possibly be doing a local sighting and you look. If you're going to go with California, you might as well just want with Saudi Arabia. If you're going to go with Texas, you might as well want this one with Saudi Arabia. Right? A local sighting means our locale, meaning right where we live right now, we're looking for the moon. It doesn't mean we're waiting to get back home. It's Isha now. We're waiting on people to call from California. That doesn't work like that. It doesn't work that way, Quan. That's not the way it works. Right? Any other questions? Good?
Yes.
No, I'm good. Yeah. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika. Huh?
He usually asks sometimes. Oh no,
I'm sure they, sisters, any questions?
No.
طيب سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.
I think you better, because I can't say it.
Huh?
I think you better turn that on. Nah. He ain't gonna touch it. He set me up last
أذن يا شيخ.
He set me up last time.
Is it then? إيش هذا؟
It should be like, yeah.
أذن يا شيخ. بسم الله.
So this is every Saturday? after
إن شاء الله.
break?
إن شاء الله.
Next class is Monday. We got class Monday on different,
Monday?
topic.